I just want to be sure. Okay, we are recording. This is the meeting of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force Complaint Committee. The time is 5:33 p.m. in the afternoon on February the 16th, 2021. On the call of the roll, Member Yankee.
Present.
Yankee present. Member Wolf.
Present.
Wolf present. Chair Smith.
Present.
Smith present. We have a quorum. I'd just like to read the remote access and information for participation. In accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order declaring a state of emergency regarding COVID-19 outbreak and Mayor London Breed's proclamation declaring a local emergency, including the guidance for gathering issued by the San Francisco Department of Public Health Officer, aggressive directives were issued to reduce the spread of COVID-19. The Board of Supervisors authorized their boards and committees to meet and convene remotely via Microsoft Teams and will allow remote public meetings via teleconference. Members of the public may participate by phone or may submit their comment by email to Cheryl, CHERYL.LEGER@sfgov.org. All comments received will be made part of the official file. Sunshine Ordinance Task Force agendas and their associated documents are available at http://sfbos.org/sunshine. As the COVID-19 disease progresses, please visit the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force website regularly to be updated on the current situation as it affects the legislative process. Next is meeting decorum. If you would like me to read that or read that yourself.
Go ahead, Victor.
Meeting decorum. Any members of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force may call for decorum due to the disorderly conduct of meeting participant. Persons who engage in threatening and or menacing behavior may be asked to leave. I have already called the meeting to order, conducted roll call, and as I noted before, agenda changes for item number 6, file number 20029. I recently received email correspondence of Mr. Petrellis, the complainant, withdrawing his complaint against the Department of Public Works. So no additional action needs to be taken on this item. The matter is considered to be withdrawn.
Okay, okay, good. So number 6 is dealt with.
Yes. Would you like to take public comment on item 1, or would you like me to move on to item 2?
Let's go to number 2.
Item number 2, approval of the January 19th, 2021 Complaint Committee meeting minutes.
Okay. Any changes? Anyone?
I'd move to approve them. I'll move to approve the January minutes?
Second.
Yeah, a mover and a seconder. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on these minutes? If you are on the line for public comment on this item, you can press *6 to unmute yourself. Otherwise, if we don't hear anything in the next few moments, we will assume there is no public comment.
Victor, I just want to say that I'm on the line and I'm waiting for my cases. This is Ann Trebek.
Okay, we are on minutes at this point. You wait until we call you, and then you can speak up. Thank you very much.
Thank
There
you.
does not appear to be any public comment on the minutes. On the motion to approve the minutes, Member Yankee.
Aye.
Yankee, aye. Member Wolf.
Aye.
Wolf, aye. Chair Smith.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes without objection. Next on the agenda is item number 3, public comment. Members of the public may address the committee on matters that are within the committee's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Are there any members of the public who will wish to provide general public comment?
Yes, please. Anonymous.
Okay, give me one moment. Okay, you have 3 minutes. You may begin.
Thank
Thank you very much. This is Anonymous. Good evening, committee members. Just a few updates on various sunshine things. A long time ago, you had found that the police chief had to turn over his future calendars. You ordered it, so he refused, and then you referred him to the Ethics Commission. I'm not sure if that actually ever finally happened or it's still in progress, but he has changed his mind and decided that he will disclose his future calendars. The mayor actually has now, in fact, disclosed some of her future calendars. And apparently it all started because the city attorney changed his mind. I think that shows how much happens when Dennis O'Hara's office changes their view on something, as opposed to when you issue an order. And I think that's unfortunate, although it's great that in this case it's happening. Also, it looks like the metadata software is actually in place, and I'm getting a flow of metadata, at least from the mayor's office, and we'll see what happens from the other agencies. The police department also, you had ordered them to turn over email and text metadata. They initially refused to do so. However, they have now informed me that they will actually. They're reconsidering the legal issue and may possibly do it. We don't know yet. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Give me one moment. Okay, is there any other members of the public who wish to provide public comment? Hearing no other commenters, general public comment is closed. Next on the agenda, item number 4, file number 19061, complaint filed by John Hooper against the Office of Economic and Workforce Development for violating Administrative Code section 67.21 by failing to respond to a public records request in a timely and/or complete manner. This matter was heard by the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force on December the 2nd, 2020, and was referred to the committee with instructions to Mr. Hooper to provide bullet points of missing documents. And that is generally the general summary of this matter.
Okay, Chairman Schmidt here. I wonder if anyone has appeared for the OEWD. I know Mr. Hooper has announced himself. Nobody here for the OEWD. In that case, I would, in the circumstances of the case itself and how this has bounced up and down a couple times, I'd ask the other members, we can hear from Mr. Hooper, but is there anything you'd want to talk about before we hear from him?
I thought I had heard Marianne Thompson announce herself earlier. Is she here or not?
Yes, I am here. Somebody keeps muting me. I am here.
Okay, I apologize. They do that to me a lot too. The muting.
I guess I'm in good company.
Don't take it personally. Okay, so we do have both parties here. I will just ask members if you have anything to add, because we're looking at some very specific questions where we are here, and certain things have already been determined. If you want, you can you can say something about it, or else we'll hear from the parties now. Okay, let's go ahead. I know that we have written information from the parties that has come in recently in terms of updates. I know there was an exchange of a further clarification or request and a response to that. But let's go ahead and first we'll hear from Mr. Hooper.
Would you like to provide a time limit to Mr. Hooper?
I think a standard 5 minutes is fine.
Thank you. I am timing it at this time. You may begin, Mr. Hooper.
Thank you, committee members, and thank you in particular for your perseverance in helping me obtain these documents that I've been seeking for some time. In terms of the chair mentioned where we stand, I think the good news is here on the third time that this agenda item has come before the complaint committee, as I understand the process, you have already determined, actually on 2 occasions, that this matter falls within your jurisdiction. You have determined that the records I seek are public, and you have reviewed specific evidence in October at your October committee meeting that shows that the records must exist because their delivery was actually part of a contract between OEWD and Third Party Parks Alliance. So as I understand your quite explicit direction at your December 2nd full task force meeting, tonight is intended to be the occasion where respondents, OEWD and Public Works were directed to provide specific responses to each of the items on the itemized list I provided you at your request. My list being sent to you on December 17th of last year and received by the parties on December 18th. So one of you task force members said at the December 2nd meeting that this committee meeting tonight is the occasion for OEWD to have another chance to produce the requested documents. I can only restate what I have said to you on numerous occasions before, that OEWD has indeed provided voluminous information, and I thank the custodian of records for those efforts. Yet, most of the information that has been provided me is either completely available through websites and not necessary to be provided again, or in some cases factually inaccurate. An important point of factual inaccuracy that I need to point out to you because it's important is that at your October 20th meeting, you were told by the OEWD custodian that no engineer's report was required under the July 1st, 2018 contract between OEWD and Parks Alliance. This is important because, in fact, the engineer's report is the only legally required document, and that is the document that allowed the city to proceed with going ahead with the project to convince neighbors to form a GBD to the point of an official petition phase. So I later corrected the record by providing you a copy of that engineer's report so that you're aware of it. The situation became complicated earlier this year, and you've seen it in my written attempts to correct the record when the Public Works custodian of record attempted to reply to you on behalf of the OEWD custodian of records, which I think is directly contrary to the clear direction you gave in your motion and long discussion at the December 2nd meeting, where you said very explicitly that both agencies were to remain individually involved in producing the information that I seek. So I want to point out that I think it's improper for one agency of San Francisco government to respond on behalf of another. I don't think that the custodian of records for Public Works had the authority, and it certainly violated your own directive to reply on behalf of the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. So I think the situation, as you know, we've gone over this before, but I think the job of the task force, the very important job of the task force in order to protect the public's interest in open government is to hold these agencies accountable and to demand that these documents, wherever they may be located, in either office or at presumably third-party Parks Alliance, be produced. That would be under the specific terms of the city's contract, under the Public Records Act, under the Brown Act.
5 minutes has elapsed.
Okay, I don't need to say any more. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, any other witnesses here on behalf of that speaker, the complainant? If not, we can now hear from Ms. Thompson on behalf of the respondent.
Can you hear me?
I heard you
Thank you.
briefly there. Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. This is how divorces happen, when people mute other people. So I would, first of all, I kind of want to take us all a little bit back. You know, this all started on 5/21/2019 with Mr. Sullivan, 7/16/2019 with Mr. Sullivan, and 8/7/2019 with Mr. Sullivan. And those three, you all agreed that he had been given his documents and that we did not have any other documents to give him. Then we've been before you on 8/20 with Mr. Hooper, on 1/21/2020, on 2/18/2020, on 12/2/2020, on 1/19/2021, and 2/16/2021. The reason why the custodian of records for the Department of Public Works responded on behalf of OEWD is because I would have sent the same exact email, and I think it's very disingenuous and very unkind to send someone the same response under separate emails. So we did it respectfully as one group, since you have put us together as one group. You have put us together on the agenda as one. The other thing I would like to say is that we have provided Mr. Hooper with every single document we have in our possession. And if he has not received any of those documents, it's because we do not have those documents. So I think that's a very important thing. And then finally, with regards to Mr. Hooper's request, you asked him to provide bullet points of what he thought was missing. And he provided you with a whole new sunshine request. And then the second time around, he provided you with a whole new sunshine request. Not bullet points that say specifically, I believe I am missing A, report on grass. I am missing B. Again, the reason why this is challenging, and here we are almost 2 years later, is because we have provided Mr. Hooper and Mr. Sullivan all the documents that are in OEWD's possession. We do not have any more documents to provide them. And at this point, to keep bringing us back to only hear me say to you, I don't have any more documents, just seems disingenuous. That's all I need to say.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on behalf of the respondent? If not, let's have a discussion among the members.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
Chairman, are you asking me if I would like to respond to the custodian's remarks?
Oh, no, not at this time, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can time for questioning and then discussion. Yes, Member Wolf.
I have a question for the respondent. Good afternoon. You said something about putting together as one, and what did you mean by that?
So originally, these were two separate complaints, one against Public Works and one against OEWD, but you consistently put us together as the same complaint, as not both of us not responding to the documents. And at one point in an earlier meeting, I want to believe somewhere around October or December, there was an opportunity to say that these were two separate issues and that Public Works was not part of this. You actually had an opportunity at that point to separate us, and you did indeed have a conversation to separate us and to treat these as two separate items. And yet here we are together, and we have been together, going to the task force together, since 2018. So we only felt that it was appropriate, and the appropriate response was for David to send one email with a CC to everyone on that email.
Okay, so let me respond to that. First of all, they're still two separate items. The fact that you're both here today at the same time is of no consequence by that. We do it as a matter of convenience for one or the other parties. If you had, for instance, if there were two or more cases against OEWD by different complainants, we would try to calendar them so that you would only have to show up to one meeting and not three separate meetings. So that's that was the design in agendizing both of these items here today in that. Now, the reason why a complainant, or I should say a requester, has the ability to make separate requests of different agencies or departments is so that they have the ability to corroborate whatever the records that they receive. Whether they're the same or not, it is not meant for each department to, work together or even collude on working together on these same cases. That would be concerning for us. We have found that many times through the ability of complainants to be able to ask different departments for the same information on the same issue, that they get different information from each of the respondents. And that has been helpful for everyone involved, more than sometimes to the benefit of the respondent. So I have to disagree with you that even if it is going to be different, you are two completely different agencies and departments. Your requests came to you independently, and by fact that you show up here together at the same time in a hearing is of no consequence. So I just wanted to put that out there. If I'm incorrect in my implication, then I stand to, I'll take some correction on that.
Yeah, this is Chair Schmidt, and I agree with Member Wolf that these are separate complaints still. We did not do a consolidation, which is an option, and so they're separate complaints, but it's just sort of a common sense thing that we have fed them to the process together because they involve the same petitioner and generally the same information that is being requested. So it's an efficiency matter, but we do want to handle these one at a time.
I would like to.
That's why we're just dealing with OEWD.
So I would like to correct you on that. You may say that these are two separate issues, but Mr. Hooper emailed David and I together, and so in response to his emails, we gave him one simple answer. I believe Cheryl reached back around and said, "Is this also the response for OEWD?" I replied in the affirmative that this would also be the response for OEWD. So again, very hard to separate out when you have a person who is sending both David and I the same emails and has us both on the same emails.
Okay. I mean, I can see that there could be confusion about that, but from our perspective, there's separate complaints. I understand myself, this Chair Schmidt, that it was your feeling that because all the requests were identical and there were going to be no documents forthcoming, that meant that you would be, in essence, you would have said exactly the same thing if there were two separate responses. So I think we understand that that's your situation right now. Chair Wolf, it was your floor. I may have taken it, but did you have further questions for respondent?
No, not on the point that I brought up. I stand by the by it because the complaints were filed independently, and it was not. We did not combine them.
Okay. Member Yankee, any questions for either party?
I think the challenge that we're facing here is that I think we're kind of back to where we were when we left off this last time, in that the petitioner still feels there's documents out there that he needs to be supplied with, and it sounds like the position of the respondent that every document that is in their possession has been turned over at this point. So I guess I kind of wondering where we go from here. Because I don't think the exercise of a bullet point list and then a response got us any closer to resolution to this.
Okay.
So, yeah, I guess I'm a little. It's kind of difficult to follow through this bullet point list. I was expecting something perhaps a little bit more specific, with an invoice from April 2nd. Or something along those lines. This seems to be kind of a restating of sorts of the initial sunshine request, or some version thereof. And so I'm not sure that we're really in a position to talk about, again, specific records and whether or not they do or do not exist.
Okay.
So no, I guess that being said, I don't have any questions. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay. I'm going to ask a set of questions. And, if any of if either of the other members have questions that arise from mine, we'll have time for that. But there's some confusion I have. I want to go to the 21 questions. And first I'm going to ask Mr. Hooper. Mr. Hooper, these were generated in early 2021. You may have been working on them in 2000, at the end of 2020. Do you consider that the documents you're asking for in these 21 requests are documents that were encompassed within your original Sunshine request?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I think if you go back to my original PRA request, which was February of 19. If you look at my second renewed request in May of 19, there were 9 questions there, and the information that I sought really flows directly. Of course, in those days, one often, as you know better than I do, as when a member of the public is looking for something that they are trying to understand, they often have to couch a request in relatively general terms. But I think you can make a pretty clear tracking of the questions I asked in February and May of 19, and have tried to actually, at your request, recast and reformulate and clarify on a number of occasions. Just another point that would interest you, or to remind the committee, the 21 questions that I have submitted most recently originated from a specific appendix to a city contract, and I produced that as one of your task force members at one meeting said to me, did I have any evidence that the information I seek actually exists? So it became very important for you to see, and I introduced this a year ago, and you considered it appropriate at your October this committee meeting, that appendix to it was a July 1st, 2018 contract between OEWD and Parks Alliance. That was the evidence that I was able to show you that the information I see must exist because it was required for the third party, the nonprofit, to be paid. And the contract was never 100% fulfilled because the effort eventually fizzled out and failed. But it got very far along. That a management report was paid for, engineers report was paid for, a petition drive was launched, and I think extended for a year or more. So we know, because we presume that Parks Alliance didn't end up working for free for a year and a half, that those documents exist. So that is the nature of my 21 questions that are still unanswered.
Okay, and I'm going to go to number 10 right now, because I believe I was the member who asked you that question earlier, and I recall a good amount of what we talked about at that meeting. Number 10 is a description of the management plan and the engineer's report. Have you received either of those yet?
Yeah, at the meeting at your committee meeting, this committee meeting in October, you were incorrectly informed that a engineer's report was not required of the contract. And to clarify the record, I submitted the engineer's report, after I was able to obtain it after that meeting, so that you would understand that the information you had received from the OEWD custodian was not factually accurate.
Okay, so are you saying that you got the engineer's report, it exists, you were told it doesn't exist, and it hasn't been produced by OEWD to you directly? Is that all? Is that all accurate?
Well, I knew it existed. You as a committee were misinformed that it did not exist, and
yes.
It was. I received it because as you well know, because a number of people over time have come before you with concerns about this whole program. I received it from one of the other people I've coordinated with who had the presence of mind to take a screenshot of the document. The difficulty there is that these public for a time websites that promote benefit districts, and maybe it's just the common practice, but they disappear and are no longer available. So one of my colleagues, I can't even remember who it was who helped me, said, "Oh, I've got a copy of that." So that's how it came. That's how it came my way.
Okay, thank you.
OEWD had told you it didn't. It was, well, not that it didn't exist, but that it was not required under the contract. It was required under the contract. Okay,
got it. And let's then I want to ask you about the management plan. So I want to shift just to the other part of number 10. As I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, you had not received a copy of the management plan when we had a meeting earlier. Is that correct?
I had not received a copy of the management plan in October. I don't believe I had received a copy of the management plan, and I recall receiving both the management plan and the engineer's report after that, basically to be able to correct your understanding of the situation.
Okay, so you were told, just like with the engineer's report, you were told in this complaint proceeding as a response to your sunshine request here that there was no management plan to be produced, and you were told by OEWD. Is that what you're saying? That it didn't exist?
Not precisely. As I recall at the October meeting, there wasn't any specific reference to the managed plan, only to the engineer's report. They happen to be kind of tandem documents. So I don't want to mislead you into saying I was told there was no management plan. I don't believe we really discussed. We focused on the engineer's report and what you were told at the October meeting. That was not correct information given to you by the agency.
So you've since received a copy of the management plan, but it hasn't come directly from OEWD. You got it from a different source, correct?
Most of what I've gotten from OEWD over time and is just it's public information off of websites.
Okay, got it.
And incidentally, I don't know when the agencies tell you they've given me everything. I don't know if you're expected just to believe any assertion that's made before your committee, or whether you yourselves, because I think that's what we're getting at here. In December, the way I understood it was this matter would only come back before the complaint committee, not when bland assertions that everything had already been provided, but when specific responses were being made to each of these things. Like, for example, the custodian of records for public works told you both that I was submitting a brand new set of questions, and then in the next sentence that he had already provided all the answers to those questions. That was in the PW custodian's letter to you of January 7th. So my response, which you've had a chance to see, is, well, if he's answered each of my 21 requests already, then it shouldn't be that much work to be able to show you as a committee, not bland general assertions, but those 21 answers, because apparently they're already there. They've already been produced.
I agree that there's ambiguity about what you may have expected in terms of when we would set another committee hearing. Because yes, I agree that we have your request for 21 items, and you did get a written response, and then the meeting was set. But I guess we're here today, and it looks like you're getting no response. I'm going to now ask a few questions of the respondent. Again, going to specifically the requests here. Ms. Thompson, okay, let's talk about, I'm going to just take an example here. Out of the requests that were made 1 through 21 by Mr. Hooper, number 1, and it talks about all grant applications in draft and final forms relating to the formation of the Greater Buena Vista and Mission Dolores Green benefit districts. Is your position that was not requested in the initial Hooper request?
No, it's actually my position that I gave that to him in the very beginning of his sunshine request. He was provided over 1,100 documents, and within those documents is the grant, the fully executed grant, and all the documents for the grant. My position is that I have provided Mr. Hooper with those documents.
Number 1.
For item number 1.
Okay, so number 1, your position is he did initially request those documents, and you've given him everything that OEWD has.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Hooper, I'm going to switch witnesses for a moment here. Mr. Hooper, is that true? Did you receive those grant documents way back when you first requested them?
I received certain information, but I did not receive one of the most important pieces of information, and that was draft grant applications. Now, grant applications are very important in this case to understand what's going on, because we know from the written record, and you have in your written record, in a letter I wrote to the city attorney on April 3rd, 2019, that the Buena Vista Green Benefit District little organized committee was instructed to remove the name Green from their application because they were told that OEWD did not fund quote unquote green benefit districts. And
okay.
that email exchange seemed to me pretty important, because if OEWD isn't involved in these things and you have to go back and change the name to comply, I wanted to see that, and I have never received that piece of information. That's very important to all of our understanding of what's going on here.
Okay, so you asked for copies of grant applications and you didn't get them?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go back to Ms. Thompson. Did you provide Mr. Hooper with copies of all grant applications as described in number 1?
Yes, we did. I'd also like to clarify something. And again, this sometimes gets lost in the conversation. There was another party that we had partnered with, another grantee called Build, that had originally responded. Build then went defunct, and the grant was then provided to Parks Alliance to complete. So again, every document that I have that is within OEWD's possession, be it a grant application or a grant document, I have provided to Mr. Hooper. And I really want to make this, I'm really trying hard on this one. During the August 2019 meeting, or prior to that, Mr. Hooper reached out to Cheryl and said that he was away on vacation and was unable to access the documents that I had provided for him. And it's unfortunate that Cheryl's not here tonight, because I then realized that, as does sometimes happen with emails, Mr. Hooper has an AOL account. They don't always retain the email. They don't always come through because the documents are too large to come through. And so at that point in August of 2019, I took all 1,100 documents and I put them on thumb drives and I gave them to Cheryl to provide to Mr. Hooper. So I cannot, 2 years later, point blank tell you every single existing document in that 1,100-page response. I can tell you that if it was in my possession, I gave it to Mr. Hooper, and I gave it to him several times.
Thank you. And I'm going to work with that. Let me work with that number. That number is very useful to me. So 1,100 pages you've given to Mr. Hooper, and you've given it to him in some cases multiple times. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, 1,100 pages in various forms. You're not sure if he's, even received all of them. Now I'm going to ask Mr. Hooper, have you received 1,100 pages of documents from the OEWD in this complaint?
Committee member, I don't know. I certainly have received lots of documents. There's no question about that. I recall in the spring of 19 receiving, I think in one day I got a blast of something like 44 documents or 44 emails, each of which had, 10 or 20 documents within each one. So in one day, let's say I got 400 plus documents. I don't know the total number, but I wonder if, and I think this goes back, I understood your clear intent in December was that we had to get beyond this impasse. And I think one of your committee members or task force members called it an impasse, where one side, me, is saying I haven't gotten what I'm asking for, and the other side is we've given you everything. It seems to me that the logical way to go about this is just say, we're sorry to put you to the extra work, but could you please answer each of these questions? And that will reveal, we're going to actually get to this in the next agenda item with Public Works, which I think will open your eyes to the fact that this is not legitimate. But I think the simplest, I would urge you, and I thought it was what you all had decided to get beyond the impasse in December, was go back and question number one.
Thank you for your suggestions, but I just wanted an answer to my question, and I did get that at the start of what you just told me. Ms. Thompson, I want to refer to a couple of the other questions. The number 10, he asked for a management plan and an engineer's report. Do you think that you've ever provided either of those documents to Mr. Hooper?
If those documents were in my possession, I provided them to Mr. Hooper. Again, this is back in August of 2019. And I'd like to remind everyone that I am deployed to the COVID Command Center. And I really want to be clear about this, is that I cannot go through all 1,100 documents one by one and say that these are responsive to his second round of questions.
You believe that you would have given it to him in 1,100 if you had him. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you know who right now has a copy of the management plan? What agencies?
I would not know.
What companies?
I would not know who that would be.
Okay.
If it was not within the documents that we have, I would not know who that person would be.
What agency would have a copy of that? In your personal knowledge?
I honestly would not be able to answer that. If it's not OEW, like those items were not in his documents that I sent him, I do not know who else would have them.
Okay. And the same goes for the engineer's report. You don't know?
I cannot recall back to 2018 what was in his responsive documents.
No.
What
I'm
I
asking
can
you
say
now.
is,
I'm asking you now if you know who would have a copy of that engineer's report right now. What agency? What companies?
I would not know.
You would not know. Thank you. I don't have any further questions for the witnesses. So members, either further questions or we should talk. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wolf. Member Wolf.
Yeah, no problem. I have just a quick question for each party. First to Mr. Hooper. You mentioned something that the DPW had mentioned to the proponents of the Green Benefits District that they couldn't use the word green, that they had to use something else. When was that? Was that before or after you made your public records request? And was that subsequent to the hearing before the task force?
I documented that exchange where the then Public Works Green Benefit District Manager, Jonathan Goldberg, corresponded with the volunteer organizing committee of the now defunct Greater Buena Vista Green Benefit District, and informed that volunteer committee, the formation committee, I think it's called, that OEWD did not fund green benefit districts, and that part of their application form would have to be changed to comply. I documented that in a letter, which is part of your record, in the spring of 2019 to the city attorney. And I made a copy for you.
I don't need much of an explanation about it, as I'm just asking for chronology here. So when did that happen? Before your public records request?
No, it happened. I made two public records requests before I filed my complaint. One was in February of 19, one was in May of 19, and I wrote the city attorney in April of 19.
Okay, so this particular situation happened even before you filed your complaint with the Sunshine Task Force, correct?
Yes, the correspondence that we're talking about right now, the correspondence between the Green Benefit District Manager and the now defunct Greater Buena Vista, that correspondence occurred sometime in 2018.
Okay, so, and did you receive any of that documentation reflecting that exchange? Now, this is specifically, we're talking about OEWD, not DPW.
If I understand your question, I did not receive, other than having come upon an exchange of emails, which instructed the Buena Vista organizing committee to change their application and omit the word green because OEWD did not fund them. I sought to receive the earlier grant application that was applied as a green benefit district, which was later apparently amended so that word was deleted. But I've never received those actual grant applications. I only know about that alteration of the application because of an exchange of emails.
Okay, thank you very much. I actually, that answers my question for both parties. I have no further questions regarding this.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll talk amongst ourselves now. I mean, this thing has come back and forth. I don't know if my perception is that much changed with the communications that just happened, and I don't know what further steps we could really take other than to send this for resolution to the task force. But you know, you guys may have better solutions than I have in mind.
Well, what are you suggesting as a solution? Have you made a suggestion?
Well, you know, it looks to me like that this could end up being an order of determination if we put it before the task force. I do think that the responsibility to get these documents was with this agency more than any other agency, including, you know, responsibility to reach out to some of these entities like the Parks Alliance to see what documents they have. it looks like there are specific documents that, should have been given to Mr. Hooper. They should be logically in the possession, and he didn't get them, as evidenced by the engineer's report, the management report. I just asked about grant application drafts, and he says he never got those, even though it sounds like there should have been grant application drafts. I guess we could just have a determination as to whether they gave him everything or not. But it looks to me like there was an insufficient production.
Well, I would say, it's one thing to just have a statement that, whether, there was enough responsive records, it wasn't complete, or what have you. I think based upon the specifics that the task force had requested of Mr. Hooper, because the task force couldn't make that determination because they didn't know what records he was specifically asking for. So subsequent to the December 2nd meeting, was this December 20th? December 18th? December 17th. He submitted these 21 bullet points as requested. And I think what it demands is Mr. Hooper telling us from 1 to 21 which ones have been answered and which ones haven't. And the task force's job is to determine which documents are or are not public and to compel them to be disclosed. It's as simple as that.
If I may, I think part of what I'm finding challenging is that it sounds like there's some records that it would be reasonable to expect OEWD to have in their possession, but they say they've turned over everything they have. So I guess the question for me is, if they say they don't have it, even though it may very well be out there, does our jurisdiction extend to say, well, we recognize you turned over what you had, but you should have more? That's where I guess I'm kind of a little lost. Was what actions we could take at this point.
Member Wolf.
So that's where that part of the ordinance that says if the respondent doesn't have any responsive records, that they are required to help the requester with a path towards a place where they might be able to find them. Okay. And that is the process of trying to help increase transparency. So if they don't have any more responsive records, but this is a record that most likely exists, probably has to exist in order for this particular transaction to take place, they must exist somewhere. Then it's really incumbent upon the custodian to then point the requester in the right direction of where the most likely place they might be able to get that. And it just keeps daisy chaining from there until the requester is able to get the actual document. Now, if the requester is just getting the runaround, well, that's a different story. That's a different conversation. That's not the conversation we're having here today. What I'm interested in here, the task that was set before us, so that the task force can know whether the request was properly responded to, is to go through, to have the petitioner, the complainant, provide us with a report of the 21 items, and to determine which items are now unresponsive, to then try to work with the respondent to see which ones might still be available. And that's it.
I think that it's my understanding that what we're being told is that the complainant is not satisfied with any of these 21 categories because he made the request for these further documents, and that the respondent's position is that these were everything that would be on this list. They already gave them. I don't know if there's any ambiguity as to whether
we're not going down that rabbit hole. I'm sorry.
Well, that's what you just were saying.
I know, but I'm saying that Mr. Hooper has to be very explicit with his bullet list and to tell the task force here, tell us what exactly he is missing. It can't be a blanket or vague statement. Like they must have. It's like I got some documents in this bullet item in bullet number whatever, bullet number X. I got some documents, but there must be more. Well, what more? It can't just be blanket. Must be more. That's not responsive to us. We're asking you brought a complaint forward. We asked you specifically to identify documents that you did not get. Now, here's your chance to tell us, a year later, whether you got them or not. And so it's really incumbent upon the petitioner at this point, having made the bullet list and having now OEWD responding to that bullet list, to tell us which ones are still outstanding so we can close this case. Otherwise, we are going down a rabbit hole. And I think that is not our job.
So Member Wolf, I'm trying to follow what you're saying, and I get it. You're saying that you would like more specificity from Mr. Hooper on a line-by-line basis as to, okay, number X, I did receive these things, and I'll give you a list of, I'll just sort of group together. This is what I did receive, and these specific things are what I did not receive. Is that essentially what you're looking for, Member Wolf?
I am looking at the packet item number 4, part 1. All right. Part 10. Item 4, part 10. And I'm on PDF page 3 and paper page, PDF page, I'm on PDF page 3 and task force page number 739. That's where I'm starting. I would have expected to receive a document from Mr. Hooper today showing for each one of those 21 bullet points which ones were still outstanding and which ones weren't. It could have been on a spreadsheet. It could have been in a word processing document. It could have been handwritten on this and scanned in. It didn't matter, but that's what I was expecting to see today. Otherwise, I'm going to either we sit here with Mr. Hooper and go through each one of those bullet points like you did. You just picked out one, but I want, the task that was set before us here in this committee by the task force was to go through this bullet list. Okay. And so it's not helpful that we have to do all this work. Okay. I think it's Mr. Hooper's job to go through the documents that he has. He's had a good long time. He's had those documents for a long time. He did due diligence to create this bullet list. OEWD did due diligence to respond to it. Now we're back here. We're supposed to give a recommendation back to the task force as the outcome of this.
And I don't necessarily agree with you, Member Wolf, as to whether Mr. Hooper was it was clear to him that he needed to come in with that. But it certainly would have been, I do agree that it would have been very helpful if we could have had something more specific. And I also would agree that maybe that's the next step here, is that we ask for more specificity in a way. Yeah.
Well, then if that's the case, if you feel based upon the period from December 2nd, 2000 and what is it, 2020, okay, till now, it's over a year later, okay, that if that wasn't the case, that we weren't expecting Mr. Hooper to come with a report, then I would say, then let's sit here and go through every single one. And if, it's going to make the meeting go longer, but that's the task at hand then. I'm not interested in doing that.
Well, okay, I'm not following what you want to do here.
What I want to have happened is that Mr. Hooper have provided a list based upon each bullet point of which whether that bullet point was now fully responded to or not. And if it not, it will take up the items that are not, and to make a determination through quick Q&A to the respondent whether those things actually exist. Otherwise, this is going to be a free-for-all for any and all documents. I'm not interested in. I don't think it's helpful.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a suggestion? This is John Hooper.
Yeah, I'll take a suggestion if you could make it quick, please.
Certainly. If you look at the list of the itemized list that I prepared at your request, almost all of them ask for invoices and payment records. If I will assert to you right now that I have received no invoices and no payment records. If I were to limit right now, and I understand the complications you're faced with, but to simplify matters, I am perfectly willing, if it makes life easier at your end, to just say, of all of those items, I think of the 21 items, something like 18, the first thing they say is invoice and records of payment. If I were to receive each of those records of payment associated with, what they described they're for, that's all I would require, and I would be satisfied. And I offer that because I understand the complexities you're faced.
Okay. If you were to get a request, say number 9, I'm just picking out one of your invoices requests, and we were to ask you to be even more specific than you have been as to what you haven't received, would that be something that you could add specificity on? Is that possible in your mind?
Well, that would be very difficult, committee member. I'm not sure who I'm being asked. Chair
Schmidt.
Oh, Chair Schmidt, excuse me. Well, that's very hard to. It's hard to be specific because again, it's a typical situation originating with a Public Records Act request. You're not necessarily. I don't know. I don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
I don't know what I don't know,
Okay.
but I do know. I do know because it was required by contract that the information exists, because otherwise Parks Alliance wouldn't have gotten paid.
But Mr. Chair, if I may, through the chair to Mr. Hooper, Mr. Hooper, I mean, you're asking for invoices and records. These are very concrete, pieces of paper, so to speak. They're not like,
right.
Having to dig up some sort of narrative, somewhere, that could exist in any number of different places. These are very specific records that may exist with any number of different custodians or agencies or departments, because a lot of this work interfaces a number of different departments, correct?
Well, no, I believe that the contract with the appendix, which essentially is identical to the list of questions I most recently asked, is a contract between OEWD and Parks Alliance. So the information I'm looking for, if you go by Ms. Thompson's assertion, it's not at OEWD, so therefore, and it's sort of a word that has, all this information by the contract itself, all invoices, documents, payroll, etc., are the property of the city wherever located. That's directly.
Yeah, I get that. But that the world doesn't work that way, right? Everybody has their own filing system, and where things get placed. What I'm asking is, the Green Benefits District is also managed by DPW. So don't you think that wouldn't DPW also have maybe a copy of that? So my question really is if OEWD doesn't have a copy of that, and you have also asked for records, this is what I started out with. My first line of questioning today is the reason why we didn't combine these cases is because each department may have different information based upon that same request. So if OEWD says that they don't have it, well, it may very well be that DPW does, because they have a different role to play in this benefits district development. So, that's why I'm trying to ascertain, what it is that you got or didn't get, so that way we can identify with Ms. Thompson here. If she says I looked, we don't have it. Okay, Ms. Thompson, where do you think he might be able to find it? Well, there are other parties that were involved with this. Maybe they have it. And here are the names of those parties. So that's kind of the answer where I'm trying to get at here today. That's it. Thank you.
With the responsibility.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Can I? This is Mary Ann from OEWD. May I just speak for a quick second? Because I actually think I can provide some clarity and some understanding or context.
I'll give you a moment, but please be brief. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try just for you. At the beginning of Mr. Hooper's presentation, did he or did he not say that the Buena Vista Green Benefit District never came to fruition?
Well, I'm not sure if what he said is overly important, but it seems like that's the fact.
It is, and that is exactly why some of the items I believe that Mr. Hooper is looking for do not exist. It's because the Green Benefit District did not go forward, and it was challenged to move forward. That's one piece, and I really want to clarify that had this become a Green Benefit District, perhaps there would be all these other items. I don't know. The second piece that I really want to clarify, I want to make this, I really want to explain this. The last time that we were able to meet in person, and I hope you can all remember, because it was the extraordinarily hot day at City Hall when the air conditioning had broken and we were dying. When I appeared at that meeting, the question of the invoices came back up again. And I said to you, I have since sent Mr. Hooper additional items regarding the invoices because they were not within our possession. They were actually found on a server where people to the controller's office where they submit their invoices, right? So when the person in the controller's office said, hey, we were cleaning out this item and we found these pieces that I think belong to your office, I then gave those items to Mr. Hooper and I emailed them to him And I also hand delivered them in hard copy because I do understand the challenges of looking at these documents on email and going one by one. So I really want to be clear is with regard to the invoices, every invoice we have, if the contract had gone to fruition, had it been completed, yeah, there might be more invoices. I don't have those invoices. The invoices I did have, I provided to Mr. Hooper post the time in which I closed his sunshine request. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, I have given Mr. Hooper everything I have, and I've given it to him twice.
Okay. Thank you. That actually was helpful information. I'm going to move to Member Yankee.
I think the respondent kind of answered this for the most part, but if I could just, just for my own clarity's sake. So, Ms. Thompson, is the way that this works is that if there are invoices or records of payment, that those would not actually be in OEWD's own possession. Those would be with the controller's office. Is that my understanding? Just in general.
No, it should have been in our possession. It's just that sometimes when people upload their documents to be paid, they upload things that don't belong there. And so, yes, it should have been in our possession. It wasn't in our possession. And when it was given back to us via our contracts team, I gave it to Mr. Hooper. It was just very unusual that it went in the wrong direction.
So the wrong direction in this case is that it went to the controller instead?
It went to, so as you know, the controller pays our invoices. It went to a thing where you upload your documents to the controller's office via our contracts team, and that's how you get paid. In this instance, it went in the wrong direction.
Okay.
But Mr. Hooper does have all of those things.
Okay, so at this point, you have already consulted with the controller's office for any and all invoices and records of payment.
I'm sorry.
I said, so is it
I'm
a fair?
Sorry, you broke up.
Okay, that's okay. Is it fair to say that at this point you've consulted with the controller to receive any and all invoices and records of payments related to this contract, and whatever you received from the controller, you've now turned over to Mr. Hooper? Is that correct?
That is very correct.
Okay. So, Mr. Hooper, it sounds like Ms. Thompson is saying that she did turn over invoices and records of payment, but I believe you moments ago, you said you had received no invoices and no records of payment. So, I'm a little confused here. Do you know, Mr. Hooper, if you received some invoices and some records of payment?
No, I have not, and that's why I attempted to say I could simplify my list, which has concerned the committee. I have not received invoices and records of payment, and as described in my letter pursuant to your direction that I submitted on 12/17, I have not received any.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is where I'm at. There's a contention that it was turned over. Mr. Hooper says he didn't receive them. There's 1,100 documents, and I don't think we can in this committee go through 1,100 documents page by page to do this. And so I think we need to figure out a way to wrap this up. It sounds like there are invoices and records of payment, so maybe we can ask Ms. Thompson to resend those to Mr. Hooper. I don't know how to do this, but I just don't see us going through 1,100 documents in this meeting.
Yes, Member Wolf, please.
Mr. Chair, I'm going back to my original premise. If by bringing this forward to the task force, we have done due diligence to hear the case. We're now, and frankly, I'm sorry, we're going on an hour here, okay? And I think clearly, I stand at Mr. Hooper did his diligence by creating a bullet list. Ms. Thompson did her diligence by providing records based upon that bullet list. Okay, if our determined, we cannot. The task force wanted this to happen to determine which documents are still outstanding. Okay? I am not convinced that I've got an answer out of that. And because Mr. Hooper has not provided a report of what is outstanding. Now, at one point he said there were no invoices or receipts or what have you. Great, those are very concrete things, okay? But now after Member Yankee's questioning, now I'm concerned that maybe he did get some of that. And I think Mr. Hooper needs to go back, review the records that he got, and tell us what exactly is still outstanding, if any.
Yeah, it seems like out of those 1,100 pages, that was an attempt to respond to the initial requests. And I wonder how many of those 1,100 pages would be responsive to these 21 requests. I think that's another way of saying what Member Wolf is saying. I could see what you're saying, Member Wolf. I know that time is an issue, and so I don't want to prolong this myself. Although I think it was important that we at least sort of delve in a little bit. So I certainly welcome, a motion here if somebody has something.
How about a public comment?
Not yet, sir. Not yet.
Mr. Chairman, John Hooper.
I gotta hold off on any. I think we need to just talk about this amongst ourselves for a moment.
I would proffer that we request that Mr. Hooper go through the records with his bullet list and provide us with a report of what items, bullet by bullet, have been received, which one he thinks are maybe he received some, and maybe there's some discrepancies, to point out what those discrepancies may be, and to provide us with the report. This is a pretty extensive list of items. Now, if he's saying that he only cares about one bullet item now, okay, and it's with regards to invoices and receipts, then again, go back to the batch of records, the 1,100 records, and determine whether there are any invoices or receipts or not, and if there are some, which ones he thinks are still missing or unresponsive. I don't know what else to do. The job of this task force is not to do that work for him.
I think that's a good idea. I like it. We need more detail. This is an extensive list. And it seems like there's some factual questions that we're getting different information from each side. And I don't disbelieve either side here. So, if we just have a motion to ask him to give us more detail, let's do that. Yeah.
I thought that, just to jump in here, I thought that was what our motion was last time that brought us to here. And so obviously it doesn't sound like Mr. Hooper was particularly understanding that, or maybe we weren't clear enough. But I think we need to make it exceptionally clear so this doesn't happen again. What we're exactly looking for, that we're looking for very specific references, not vague catch-all categories of things. And so I just want to avoid this repeat cycle that we seem to be going back and forth, where Mr. Hooper responds back with a very vague, generalized grouping of documents that we can't actually have a solid back and forth discussion on. So I think we need to make sure that that's very clear in our motion.
I would say, Mr. Chair, I don't know that a motion is actually needed. If you as chair wanted to have this continued at your pleasure, and give Mr. Hooper the opportunity to provide this information once more, then I'm okay to hearing the case again. I don't know that we need a motion to order him necessarily to do that.
Mr. Hooper, I think that's exactly what we're going to do here. Is we want to work from your 21 points, but it's not good enough yet. What we want to know is, on each of these points, what have you received? And you need to you need to be considering the 1,100 pages that you got from OEWD that they've said they gave you, and it sounds like you got. What did you get? What specifically do you think is out there that you didn't get? And I'd like to know if you're looking for it from OEWD, if you yourself, because you have a lot more knowledge on this case than probably anyone, if you yourself think that you know where this document would be located, and that would include if it's with a contractor who OEWD could make contact with to request that copy of that document. So I think that what I would like to do is continue this matter to get that more detail. And so I mean, I'll let you speak, Mr. Hooper, unless there's anything from my other members. I think that's what I'd like to do here. Mr. Hooper, any response right now?
Well, yes, I think I can maybe simplify the task from the point of view of the committee and the task force. And just to reiterate, I think the real question is, what have I not received? And I have not received any of the described invoices and records of payment listed in my set of 21 questions. So I haven't gone through them right now, but so right before you now, you can see a great number of those questions start, and most important, are invoices and records of payment. Simply stated, maybe it will save us some time. I mean, I can send this to you in an email, and we can put it off for another couple of months and God knows what. But I think the further point that I am a little disappointed in is, and I take it from the discussion that occurred in December, I think you're shifting the responsibility to some extent to the petitioner, where the respondent has the full responsibility. Thing out at Parks Alliance, it's not a question of OEWD, politely requesting. It's OEWD owns this stuff. The city owns this stuff. OEWD has the responsibility under City of San Jose, under the contract itself, under every law you can relate it to this you can think of. They are obligated because they own this information. It doesn't matter whether it was on the controller's office server or whatever. So I'm a little disappointed that you appear to be telling me to do all the homework. Okay, so I can send you an email tomorrow saying, well, let me just look. Right now, it'll take 1 minute.
Well, I don't want you to take 1 minute,
Item 3,
Mr.
item
Hooper.
4, item 5, item 6, item 7, item 8. Anything that starts with the word invoice and records of payment, I have not received, and it's the obligation of the city agency which owns those records, wherever they may be housed, and I think they're housed at Parks Alliance. If the OEWD custodian doesn't have them, I take her at her word, but they do exist.
And I myself, I'm cognizant of the problem with Parks Alliance and whether OEWD has done anything to obtain documents from the contractor. That is a live issue in my mind, but it may not be everyone's issue. But right now, in the procedural context, and I'm just going to stay with, thank you, Mr. Hooper, for your request. I'm going to stay with my what I had stated earlier as to what I want to do here. But I have a question, or Mr. Member Wolf.
So let me just ask Member Yankee, your last question to Mr. Hooper, wasn't that about whether he had any invoices?
Yes.
And what was his response?
Mr. Hooper says he's received no invoices, and Ms. Thompson has said that she has turned over invoices that she received from the controller's office related to Mr. Hooper's request.
Okay, so if that's the crux of the issue here, how are we now going to respond to that? The question. Let me ask Ms. Thompson. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay.
You know
Good.
what?
So let me ask you this question,
I will,
Ms. Thompson. Ms. Thompson,
sure.
This is not an opportunity for you to just get on the phone and start talking to me. Okay. I have a specific question for you. Is OEWD the contracting agency for Parks Alliance in this particular case regarding the benefits district?
We are the agency that holds the contract, yes. I, however, want to explain something to you. You are also in receipt of all the documents which I sent Mr. Hooper. And if Cheryl were here tonight, she'd be able to verify that, again, when I found the invoices, after I had closed out the initial Sunshine request, I sent them to Mr. Hooper with a CC to Cheryl. So I, in fact, not only have a paper trail of this, but Cheryl would also be the person to say that she has received those invoices. And I really want to be very fair about this. I think this is very frustrating for Mr. Hooper, and I can hear it in his voice. And that's not what I want to create him is any more frustration. But I do want to be very abundantly clear that every document I have sent him, I have also CC'd Cheryl on. So it does sit at the task force. You, in fact, have all those documents.
Member Wolf, did you have another? Okay.
No, I didn't lower my hand.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is one of those cases where there's just too many. Before we send this to the full task force, I think we need to get that further specification for Mr. Hooper. So let's go ahead. The chair wishes to continue the matter. We do also need you, Mr. Hooper, to take your 21 items and tell us what you have received, because it sounds like there are documents that were in the 1,100 pages which go to these issues, and there's such a discrepancy between what we're hearing from Mr. Hooper and Ms. Thompson that I think that would help us to figure out how we can rule in this matter. So I don't have anything else, members. I think anything else before we conclude this matter?
I would just say that to Mr. Hooper, yes, you're correct. Okay, that the incumbency isn't upon the petitioner to produce anything. Okay, the records, but what is necessary and required of the petitioner when we are trying to resolve an issue is to be specific and tell us exactly what you had not received. Now, thank you for saying that you have not received any invoices. The respondent, Ms. Thompson, said that she had contact with our administrator. We will go and contact our administrator when she comes back to the office as to what exactly Ms. Thompson was referring to and what she has received and whether they're in this packet or not. And where, so that we can see for ourselves whether we received the invoices, and if you didn't receive the invoices and we did, then we'll give them to you, okay? But in my research of this packet, I don't necessarily see any specific invoices. And this is a very large packet. So that's what I'm going to say. I'm not trying to change your order, Mr. Chair. I just felt that was important to say for the record.
Okay. I don't know if because we're continuing this, I don't think we need, do we need public comment on this? I don't think we do because we're. Oh,
Yes, we should
You
still
should.
take a comment and take a vote on the motion to continue.
okay. Motion to continue. Okay, then I make a motion to continue to ask for further specification on the 21 bullet points from Mr. Hooper. We need to get some more information so we can determine what he hasn't received, what he believes is out there, as specific as he can get, what he has received, and if there are instances where he can identify other entities, such as the Parks Alliance, where he thinks that entity should be holding a copy of that document. And that's okay. That's my motion.
I'll second that motion.
On
Okay.
that motion, are there any members of the public who wish to provide public comment?
Anonymous,
Yeah.
please.
Yes, Anonymous, you have 3 minutes. You may begin at this time.
Thank you very much. I think the Chair Schmidt raised an important issue, and I don't know, maybe it's not yet the time to discuss it. Maybe that's why it hasn't been discussed in detail, but I think it's the most important issue in this case, which is what was the actual obligation of OEWD, if any, to go to its contractors, and did they do so? And Miss Marianne Thompson keeps on saying, well, we didn't have it, or I didn't have possession of it, but that's not what the law requires. The law does not require the specific employee to have custody of it. The law doesn't even require the city agency to have custody of it. The law requires the city agency to have constructive possession of it in 2 court cases, City of San Jose versus Superior Court, when the records are personal, and under Community Youth Athletic Center versus City of National City, when the records are held by a contractor. And I think you actually asked, when a complaint is filed, tell us, respondent agency, how did you search? What was your method of search? And maybe OEWD has already done this because you've heard this case so many times. Did they actually go to their contractors at the time the request was made, not a year later when the records could have been destroyed, but at the time the request was made? Did they go to all their then contractors, ask for all the records that the contract required? And if they didn't, I think that's the root problem here, if that never happened. And I do think that, in fact, the Community Youth Athletic Center discusses this. It doesn't matter that they acted in good faith. They say, quote, no bad faith finding is required to support the finding that there was a PRA violation. The effect of the city's inability or unwillingness to locate the records has the same effect as withholding requested information from the public. And they even discuss what happens if at the time the request was made, the records existed by the contractor, and later on they were deleted. It's still a violation. So I think they need to tell you yes or no. At the time the request was made, were all of these records requested from the city's or OEWD's contractors? And if they weren't, even if they don't exist now, that's the violation. And I still haven't heard whether OEWD actually did all that work at the time the original request was made. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else with public comment?
Sullivan.
Yes,
Sullivan?
please proceed.
Okay. First of all, there's never been any invoices that I've seen from this contract with Mission Dolores. It had 3 green benefit districts involved in it. To try and cut through the chase, to help Mr. Hooper, I actually did a public record request with the controller's office on this contract and asked for invoices. This was in December. They told me that to see OEWD and Public Works or whoever issued the contract for any further details. All they would do is point to me the item on their database that the contract existed. But for any further details, the controller's office told me to contact the issue thing. There's never been any invoices given on this contract. Well, I do know I've seen an email from Jonathan Goldberg in response to a reporter's question, and I don't remember the date, but he said about $100,000 had already been spent. And we don't have any idea of how much total amount was spent on this contract of the it was about 159,000, no, 195, something like that, $1,000, and there's no invoice, no accounting for that. Even if the invoices are somehow like being withheld, they should give it a legitimate reason for why they're being withheld and not being made public. And Mr. Hooper and the task force should be informed. You're not going to find any invoices in any of those documents that have been submitted to you guys. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment on this matter? Okay, so we should proceed to a vote. No more public comment on this matter.
On that motion to continue the matter, the motion, Member Yankee.
Aye.
Yankee, aye. Member Wolf. Member Wolf, you're muted.
Sorry, yes, sorry, aye.
Wolf, aye. Chair Smith.
Aye.
Smith, aye. The motion passes to continue the matter. Next on the agenda is item number 5, file number 19062, complaint filed by John Hooper against Public Works for allegedly violating Administrative Code, Section 67.21 by failing to respond to a public records request in a timely and/or complete manner.
Okay, unless my fellow members have anything to add at this point, I will go ahead and we can hear from Mr. Hooper on this separate complaint against the Department of Public Works.
Would you like me to start?
Yes, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. We've covered a lot of this material already in some form or another, so I think I can be relatively brief. The 19062 is a little bit complicated by the 2 letters that the custodian of records for Public Works submitted after your direction to the department at your December full task force meeting, directing the department to respond to my itemized list. And as you know, in the first letter he wrote you, he told you incorrectly that the cases were being heard together and that gave him the authority to respond on behalf of both departments. You have correctly seen that is incorrect. He then told you that I had submitted entirely new categories of documents, which I think you've also now understood to be incorrect. And having said that it was an entirely new list of questions, he then said that he'd provided all the answers in prior production. So I think I said this once before when we were talking about the prior complaint that I suggested in a letter to all of you that since Mr. Steinberg has already done the work, it doesn't sound like it would be too much to ask him to just reveal it. So then Mr. Steinberg, the custodian of records for Public Works, wrote a second letter to you in which basically he made the argument that he had complied with all of my requests, and he chose one item to show how he had done so. And he chose my question number 5, which asked for invoices and records of payment, as well as meeting minutes, notes, and sign-in sheets involved in the San Francisco Parks Alliance preparing for and conducting Mission Dolores GBB community meetings 1, 2, and 3. So I don't know how easy it is for you to open up these things that are just sort of files by reference, but you've probably seen that in that second letter from the custodian records, there were 5 files, which eventually, with the help of a few people who are more computer savvy than I am, I was able to open them. And the first one, well, I have it written down as 1053564, are a series of screenshots off the old defunct Greater Buena Vista website, the proposal, which is, which I had seen ages ago and was not looking for. The second one were screenshots off the Mission Dolores meeting, also off the old website. The third one were a summary of the third meeting. The fourth one had to do with the November 18 meeting. In essence, they were pieces of information which I would just describe to you as screenshots off of a previously public but now disappeared website, which the city paid San Francisco Parks Alliance to design and put up. And so again, as I attempted to say in the prior matter, the main thing I would like, using item number 5 as the current example, because that's the one that the custodian records used, is I have received no invoices and no records of payment. I have received no sign-in sheets. Whether what he sent me constitute meeting minutes, I don't know if, some summary that's put up on a website later is what I was really looking for. But again, at this point, so that we're all still living when this is over, I'm perfectly satisfied if I were to receive invoices and records of payment, because really what this is hundreds of thousands of city dollars being wasted on efforts which residents don't buy.
5 minutes has elapsed.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hooper. Anyone else on behalf of complainant? Okay. Let's go ahead and hear from the respondent from the DPW.
Good evening, Chair Schmidt and committee members. My name is David Steinberg, and I'm custodian of records for San Francisco Public Works. As Chair Wolf noted, Mr. Hooper's complaint against OEWD and Public Works are separate items, but the task force has heard them together because the underlying facts are similar. I wasn't trying to, I don't know what, I can't remember what Mr. Hooper said I was trying to usurp there. I wasn't speaking on behalf, I was responding on behalf of both of us, rather than, as Mary Ann said, sending you 2 identical letters. It just seemed economical, but that's beside the point. The Sunshine Task Force at its December 2nd, 2020 meeting adopted a motion by Member Yankee that, quote, the petitioner provide a bullet list of missing documents to the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, end quote. The motion was subsequently approved, directing Mr. Hooper to provide the same list of missing documents to Public Works. As Chair Wolf noted in the previous complaint against OEWD, Mr. Hooper did not follow those instructions. Instead of providing a list of allegedly missing documents, he presented a list of 21 broad categories of documents with no regard to whether or not we had already provided these records. It's essentially a regurgitation of the categories in his records request. After reviewing the list of 21 document categories Mr. Hooper provided, Public Works has determined that all documents responsive to these categories that are in our possession and under our control were provided to Mr. Hooper in our prior production. And then, as he was mentioning, as an example, I went to item 5 of his 21 bullet points for invoices and records of payment, as well as meeting minutes, notes, and sign-in sheets involving SFP, preparing for, et cetera, et cetera. I did a very quick check of documents, and I found 5, which you can see on page P1262 of your file. And maybe he doesn't understand what they were. They weren't screenshots from the website. These were PowerPoint presentations that were given at community meetings. So these were the notes, the minutes, that were presented at the meeting, which were then subsequently posted on the website, as well as there's another one, a Q&A summary from the Mission Dolores TBD Community Meeting number 3. Those are essentially minutes of the meeting. The fact that they were posted on the website afterwards just means that they were trying to get the information out. I didn't get it from the website. I got it through our search of records. Public Works has complied with the task force's instructions to provide all records requested by Mr. Hooper that are in our possession or under our control. Approximately 240 pages of documents directly, and an additional 600 documents through a link to a previous request. We once again ask that you recommend that the full task force find no violation by Public Works. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else on respondents' behalf? Okay, members. Anything for the witnesses first? Member Wolf, please. Member Wolf?
Yeah, so just unmuting, it takes a moment. So, you know, here's the thing, and there is no combining of these cases, period. Okay? There should be no connection between DPW and OEWD with regards to responding to these complaints together or not. Whatever is being asked of each of the parties should be done independently. And I explained at the beginning of the last item why that is necessary. And I think it's, Mr. Steinberg, I really find it very convenient that you're reframing the matter in this way with regards to, after we just went what we went through with the previous item, with regards to how Mr. Hooper created his bullet list. What is clear in the bullet list is the repetition of the lack of invoices and records of payment. I'm going to focus just on those two items. And I'm going to ask you, in any of the documents that you provided him, are there any invoices and records of payment? Mr. Steinberg? If you're on mute, *6.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you very much. Everyone does it. As Mr. Hooper is well aware, because he said it, Public Works does not hold the contract with Parks Alliance. That is held by OEWD.
That's not the question.
We would have no copies of invoices that I am aware of. If there was a stray one in an email that we may have been copied on, that I would have provided to him, but we don't do the payments. We don't hold contracts, so I don't have those records.
Okay, so then who would?
My belief would be probably if OEWD. Well, Mary Ann Thompson said that she provided to him, so my understanding then would be that OEWD would. And part of the whole crux of this case a couple of years ago that started was that Mr. Hooper was suggesting that because we were involved with Parks Alliance, we had an obligation to go and try to get, even if we didn't have the documents, to get them from Parks Alliance. But again, the contract is not with us; it's with OEWD,
okay.
And so we didn't have it. To the degree to which, to your first point, if I could respond to your first point,
sure.
I think the reason that we responded together was, as Mr. Hooper said, he sent a letter to both of us together, all of us together, and we did our own search for records independent of OEWD. Although I will say, I was trying to find. I think there was one case where I couldn't find something that I thought we should have had, and I did send a note to OEWD and said, "Do you have a copy of that email?" They provided it to me. I provided it to Mr. Hooper.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to say I don't have it.
Fair enough. And I do know the different entities that are involved in the creation of a benefits district, specifically a green benefits district. So I get that there are a number of different parties involved, city departments and entities to do that. So I can understand there'd be some communication between you all. So I get that part. I just want to make it very, very clear that despite how the request was made before it comes to the Sunshine Task Force, is of no consequence. How that the request is to be responded to, but how it's submitted to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force is a completely different process. So any assumption that because the request was asked of all of you together does not mean that the petitioner in filing for a hearing is requesting that the complaints be all heard together, combined as one. Okay, I just want to make that clear.
I completely understand.
Okay.
You've made that clear for more than a year. I've just noted. I'm just saying that they've been heard together because it makes sense because they're about similar issues. As you said, it doesn't make sense for you to hear me 1 month and Marianne the next month.
Yes, it does. It does make, I would appreciate if you not decide that for us. It is important for us to hear it duplicating because they're separate cases and we hear each case on its own merits. So it's really not.
I didn't disagree with that. I'm sorry.
Okay. I thought that's what it sounded like you just said.
No, I've been completely clear that they were not combined. In fact, I believe Member Yankee originally at the last task force made a motion to dismiss the case against Public Works because it seemed clear to him. I believe that I think I'm paraphrasing correctly, that Public Works has given everything we have, but given the fact that the same complaint for the same underlying documents was made against OEWD, that he rescinded that motion and you moved it forward till you could hear them together in a logical fashion. I believe that was why it was done. But I mean, I think quite properly, it makes sense for you. I think you have said it makes sense for you to hear them at the same meeting, so you don't have to go over things over and over. But I'm quite aware that they weren't combined.
If there was agreement that to combine the cases, I would have been satisfied, but that's not the case. Okay, so we're dealing with these independently. Now, let me ask you this, Mr. Steinberg. So you claim that you have no invoices and no records of payment. Understood. And I asked you who would, okay, and you said that it would be OEWD that would have that. Is that correct?
Based on what Ms. Thompson said, yeah.
Okay. Now there's a third item on the list of participants. Is that something that you have, or have you responded to?
A list of participants of.
I believe. I'm sorry.
Sign-in sheets.
I believe so. I think that's what he was asking for.
I believe we've released at least a few sign-in sheets. I'm pretty sure I remember redacting people's personal information, but it's my understanding that they didn't do sign-in sheets at some point after these groups were holding their meetings. So the ones that did exist, we produced, and if they didn't exist, then I didn't have them.
Okay. Let me clarify this with Mr. Hooper. Mr. Hooper, am I asking the right question? Am I asking the right question?
Well, I think there's an entity that it seems to be getting a little bit forgotten in all this, and that is because the city owns all these records, no matter where held. I think both Public Works and OEWD are required, and you must direct them.
No, that's not true. No,
well,
not true.
May I finish my sentence?
Sure.
I just wanted to say that by virtue of the explicit language in the contract and the various legal cases that Anonymous referenced, the departments are required to ask Parks Alliance, and that seems to be under underemphasized in the discussions that's gone on this evening. I think that's kind of a missing piece here that might get to the heart of it.
Well, the ordinance requires under 6721C that if a custodian is not in possession of a record, that they shall assist the requester in directing a request to the proper office or a staff person. That's what I'm hanging on here. Now, if there's something in the contract with Parks Alliance that says otherwise, I think that should be pointed out, because that would override, that would make an explicit directive that
I can give you chapter and verse. The articles of the July 1st contract between Parks Alliance and and OEWD for $157,000 to try to form a Mission Dolores Green Benefit District, which explicitly say that all invoices, documents, payroll, etc., are the property of the city, wherever located, are in that contract, articles 4.4, 6.5, 6.8, and 6.9, and they've been part of your record for months.
Yeah, but that's not my question. That is a kind of an overarching requirement that the records are to be in the possession of the city. The city is made up of multiple departments, and depending upon what their responsibility is in their as party to this contract will determine who gets what documents when. So if the invoicing and the records of payment aren't part of a process that DPW or OEWD is part of, and it's maybe part of the controllers, it's still the city. Okay. The question here is did they do, to me at this point, did they do enough diligence under 6721C to help you find them? Now, they provided a lot of documents. Obviously, you're saying that none of them are responsive to your bullet points, that there's no invoices and no records of payment. So lots of paper, great, not enough, not the actual, they're not responsive to your request.
Yes, you're stating my concern correctly.
Right. Okay. So the point here, though, is that even though the documents are in the ownership of the city, it doesn't require that this department or that department actually have to have possession of them, especially if there's another process for those particular kinds of documents that goes somewhere else. Now, I think it's pretty clear that DPW and OEWD are familiar with the benefits district process, because there are lots of benefit districts of different types that exist around the city. So I think it would be incumbent upon them to be able to answer the question. Okay, does that make sense to you, Mr. Hooper?
It does, but with all due respect, I think what's lacking is a requirement on your part, a demand that they take that responsibility.
Okay,
because it's explicitly required, and unless they are held accountable by you, by the task force, that is, and you demand these documents because wherever located they belong to the city, it's their responsibility, the agencies, and this, it doesn't seem that complicated. The contract is between OEWD and Parks Alliance, and DPW had a full-time employee and provided a lot of the money. So as we've said many times, it's hard to sort out quite where either and both of those entities have the responsibility, and you have the responsibility, I think, demand that they produce them, not that you shift the burden to the petitioner.
Well, I'm not suggesting that right now. I'm suggesting whether I got the question right, so that I know how to ask a question of Mr. Steinberg. Okay, because the point here is yes, the contracts are with the contract for Parks Alliance. It's from what I understand is only with OEWD. It was not with DPW. Am I incorrect?
The contract, well, this goes back
You're
to,
correct.
this goes back to the confusion we've had before. The contract, you're absolutely right. The contract is with Parks Alliance, and it specifically says that Parks Alliance, the OEW owns all work product, invoices, documents, payroll, etc.
Okay.
That is true.
Okay. So that's what I'm trying to get to kind of drill down in here, is that DPW may not have possession of any of those documents. Okay, it's worthwhile to ask them because they're part of the process. I get that. But the question truly is at this point is whether, if they have documents, great, and if they want to give them to you, and if they're not withholding them for some other reason that we would accept, okay, great, no problem. I think though it is incumbent upon them under 6721C to be able to help you find those documents. And there are time limits on the amount of time that they can spend. I believe it's under the CPRA. But be it as it may, everybody's trying to help everybody. So I'm going to stop there. I'll let Member Yankee speak. I've spoken quite a bit, and I want to make sure we can get through this fairly quickly. Thank you.
Okay, Member Yankee.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of pick up where Member Wolf left off. And so I think the way I am understanding this is that, let's go back to the invoice and records of payment. And so my understanding at this point now is that Public Works has indicated they do not have any of those records. They've also indicated that the city agency that would have those records is OEWD, since OEWD is the one who is the contracting agency. So and then obviously they referred Mr. Hooper to OEWD. So I mean, at this point, I'm kind of looking at it as, what if this type of request be made to, let's say, a totally unrelated thing like Department of Elections, right? Obviously, we know they're not, would never have these invoices. So what would they do? They say we don't have these invoices. The contracting agency is OEWD. That is where you should do it. There's no obligation on Department of Elections to ask Parks Alliance for them or then create a response, right? They would need to direct the requester to the appropriate place to find those records. And I thought that was pretty clear at the last meeting. I'm glad we ended up continuing it here because now I think we were able to drill down a little bit further. So I guess for me, I'm kind of returning to my position in the last time we heard this, which is that there's really only one agency that's going to have these records, and that's OEWD. So I'm not seeing much of a reason to continue this along with Public Works at this point. I think they obviously had some involvement in parts of the work product. They've given everything they can. They referred the requester back to the appropriate city agency that would have any outstanding invoices or records of payment. So that's kind of where I'm at this point.
Chair Schmidt, this is David Steinberg. May I respond belatedly to a question
I'm sorry.
Member Wolf asked?
I need to hold off on that. I know Member Wolf has a question.
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't? Okay. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Steinberg.
I'm just belatedly responding to Member Wolf's question that yes, I can say that I would know that OEWD does have copies of the invoices because Ms. Thompson just forwarded me a couple emails that she sent to Mr. Hooper and Daniel Tomasevich about a year ago that included a number of them. So they would be the agency, and according to this Mr. Hooper received it almost exactly a year ago.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. A couple questions for Mr. Steinberg. You've never made any contact with Parks Alliance about getting records to respond to Mr. Hooper, have you?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Have you ever told, other than telling Mr. Hooper that he could get his records from OEWD, have you ever referred him in any way by telling him that records he was looking for would be located in other parts of the city government, exclusive of the OEWD?
No, I don't. I'm not aware of any. Although I did, he and his two associates have made about 36 requests. So I have referred him to previous records requests where he could find some of the documents that he's looking for.
And those were documents that he had received from your department previously?
Mr. Tomasevich, Mr. Sullivan, and Mr. Hooper, as I said, they've done a combined total of about 36 requests. And so where there were areas that were overlapping, I have, in addition to providing the documents that I have, if there were previous requests that had responsive records, I pointed them to those ones where they could download them rather than going through the process of redacting them and producing them again.
Okay. And the one agency, is it correct that you told all these individuals they needed to go to get the records from OEWD, and that's where you thought any of the records you didn't have would most likely be located within the city, correct?
I believe that's what I did. I'm just actually trying to look to see exactly, because depending on what had been requested of me, in many cases the categories were basically, anything having to do with this, so the original request that this is a complaint about said it was for documents pertaining to the formation of the GBD, and it lists, the 9 categories of things. And actually, I don't see that he asked me for any invoices, to be honest. In this report, he may have done that to OEWD, but for me, he was asking for applications, contracts, photographs, correspondence, survey data, text messages, minutes of meetings, survey data, that sort of stuff. I don't believe he actually specified that he wanted invoices in his request to me.
Did you ever provide him an engineering report? A copy?
I want to say that I've seen, I don't know if they were final engineering reports, but I know that I've seen references to, and I think copies of engineering reports, and I don't know if it was this specific request or one of his other requests. I'd have to go try to dig them out.
Okay, so you're not sure.
They're about it.
You're not sure.
I couldn't say for certain, but I want to say that I can't say for certain.
Okay, if he were to ask you today, can I get a copy of this engineering report? You could get that for him, correct?
I believe so, and as I said, because I'm pretty sure I've seen it, which means I either release it to him or I release it to one of his associates. So I should be able to go to dig through and find where in our previous responses we've already released that.
Okay.
One of the problems is, as you point out, we did have a green benefit district manager for public works, and so to your question, did I ever go to Parks Alliance? I never did, but I worked with Jonathan Goldberg to find out what we had, where we had it, the drives, his emails, all that sort of stuff. He no longer works for the city, so it's somewhat of a disadvantage, although the person who has taken over some of his responsibilities, I have, Mr. Sullivan has made a subsequent request that I'm still working on. And I asked him for all those stuff, and he gave me everything that was in his files, in the
Okay.
GBD files that we have.
Okay. And just one last thing is the management plan. Is that something you could get a copy to Mr. Hooper if he asks you for a copy today?
I don't know. I don't know if
Don't
we have
know.
that.
Okay. And do you know if you've ever seen it in DPW records, the management plan?
I couldn't say for certain that I have. I honestly don't remember.
Okay. No further questions. Members. Oh, I don't know. Member Wolf, do you have your hand up or? Okay. I'll say that I'm thinking about Member Yankee's motion on this because my hesitation is that I don't know how it seems to me that Mr. Hooper's made a legitimate request that definitely goes to OEWD. And I also think that there's got to be a route whereby he can make a request to one of these agencies and then he can get certain access and have them act on his behalf to make requests to these private entities or semi-private entities, such as, the Parks Alliance, for example, because there is a certain legal duty to do that. And so that's the one thing I hesitate on in terms of whether the DPW complaint should be dismissed. But on the other hand, I like the motion possibly because maybe we just say that DPW can legitimately hand that obligation over to OEWD. And so that's really where the proper complaint is here. That's my sort of my conundrum here. But I'm thinking about your motion, Member Yankee, and kind of on the fence about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty much where I was before. I think that it's obviously very clear at this point who the contracting agency is, and that's OEWD, right? To me, there may be records that DPW had. It sounds like there were. They turned those records over. It sounds like they may not have other records, for example, the invoices and so forth. And so I think Mr. Steinberg referred Mr. Hooper to the appropriate agency, which would be OEWD, to obtain those records. I don't think it's reasonable to expect every city agency to reach out to, every nonprofit that may exist. Like I said, if this was directed, let's say, inappropriately to Department of Elections, I wouldn't expect Department of Elections to reach out to Parks Alliance and try to get the records. I would expect them to say, this is, not something we're involved in, but let me help you find these records, make some calls, figure out that, yep, the contracting agency is OEWD, and then refer the requester over there. So for me, I think that's pretty clear that that's what happened in this instance. And so I haven't officially made a motion yet, but that's my line of thinking on this.
Yeah. It sort of comes down to how much of a connection does DPW have with Parks Alliance, and they do have a connection, clearly. I don't quite understand it, but that's not my job to understand the complexity of that situation. But I see that, maybe they have an obligation, but maybe the best way for DPW to deal with it is just to say, look, get all those documents. We'll give you all our documents, and we're going to send you over there because that's where you're going to get all the rest. So I could see, the
I
validity.
think there has to be someone, some entity to be held accountable at the end, someone to coordinate the response, someone to get the person the records they need. It can't be scattered, in my opinion, all over the place. I think that's part of the challenge, at least in my opinion, of what's going on here, right? Who's responsible? Who should be doing the reaching out? I think we all know who the contracting agency is. That's not a mystery here. It's OEWD. So could DPW also have some records? Yeah, they did, and they turned them over, and then referred the requester back to where they. So I'll stop there. That's how I kind of see this.
Okay. So do we have a motion? I guess we're.
All right, I'll make a motion just to get this, wrapped up. If you guys want to disagree, that's okay. But I would move to refer this back to the task force. And in this case, since I think we did hear some of the merits already, I would do it with a recommendation to find no violation.
I'll second that.
We have a motion to refer the matter to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force with a recommendation to find no violation. Would you like to take public comment on that at this time?
Yes, please.
Are there any members of the public who wish to provide public comment on this matter?
Yes, anonymous, please.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much. So, while I understand the reasons for this motion, I think there may be two more questions. Maybe the full task force needs to resolve it. Was it that within the time of the Sunshine Ordinance response timeline, the referral to OEWD was made and all the other responses provided on a timely basis? I'm unclear of that just from this discussion. And secondly, I'm pretty worried that he'll never get any records from the actual nonprofit that was a contractor of the city. And because if what happens is that Public Works doesn't have to do anything, and OEWD says, well, we didn't at that time, so we don't have to do anything, and maybe they're not a contractor anymore, he's never going to get anything. Anything of what is not, what's still missing that wasn't in the direct possession of the city, but instead in the constructive possession of the city. And I do think that if this wasn't at the SOTF, but in a court, it doesn't matter which agency actually is the one that had the contract, because generally the contract is made on behalf of the city and county of San Francisco by and through a particular department head. So in the end of the day, it's the city and county of San Francisco which is the party to the contract. And in that court case that Chair Schmidt discussed in the full task force regarding the Fine Arts Museum, which is again Community Youth Athletic Center versus City of National City, even though a specific commission made that contract, the defendant is the entire city of National City, including the other parties. So I do think that it is the city as a whole who has a responsibility to get the records from the contractor and give them to the requester. Thank you.
Anyone else on public comment? Sullivan, go ahead. Victor, are you ready?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, I just wanted to make a couple other points that the Green Benefit District manager, who was with Department of Public Works, had to, in the contract, he was supposed to see and approve all receipts and stuff to get paid. But the records should be with the city. I mean, the city should have the records. They came through a portal called Total Grant Solutions to OEWD. And the city has a 3-year retention of all financial records. This is a contract. The city just doesn't hand out money without, some accountability as to how it's being spent and invoices and stuff. And it's listed in the contract, specific times at intervals what they should produce, invoices and receipts to get paid. And the last thing is that I don't think that Mr. Hooper could give you any more detailed list. He's not going to know like the dates that these invoices and things were submitted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, no further public comment. I think we're ready for a vote on this.
I'd just like to add something, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Really quick. It's clear that the contracting agency for the subcontractor is clearly the responsible party, which was the center of discussion in the previous matter. And I think that there has to be some incumbency. We'll get to the bottom of this at one point or another. I want to assure the public of that. Even if it means that we have to request that the mayor and mayor's office intervene, because something like this shouldn't happen. Because if we could talk about any contract in the city with a nonprofit organization that happens. This is a 12L issue. If there was a request for information made against Parks Alliance, it'd be a 12L issue, and it would still go back to whoever the contracting agency is to get those documents. Now, if the nonprofit organization does not want to provide those documents, there's got to be a copy of it with the city somewhere. So it's incumbent upon the contracting agency to be able to have those documents, and they got to be part of a file somewhere. What I'm a little concerned about here in this case and the other case is that we're talking to public information officers. Now, while I appreciate their work in trying to collect as much information and understand everything as possible, speaking to the actual people that actually manage and the actual contract itself, those people would have the direct answer for any and all of this. And that's why we encourage that to happen as often as possible, so we don't end up with vague responses or too broad of a response from an agency. Okay, we expect that we get some exactness from it. Okay, I'm not accusing anyone or another party of that at this moment, but that's really kind of where things need to stand, and we need to zero in on these questions when they come up, and just have the party responsible be responsible for that. Thank you. I'm ready for a vote.
On that motion, if there's no objection, Member Yankee.
Aye.
Yankee, aye. Member Wolf.
Aye.
Wolf, aye. Chair Smith.
Aye.
Smith, aye. The motion passes without objection. The matter will be referred to the task force with a recommendation to find no violation. Next on the agenda is item 6, file number 20029 has been withdrawn by the complainant via email.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, John Hooper, may I ask? I just want to ask for clarification about what you'd like from me and what you're expecting, and I'll be very brief. I understand that you would like me to, and I have offered to change my complaint to limit it to the not received invoices and records of payment, and I'm happy to do that. I would prefer, with your permission, not to have to go through whatever thousands of documents and itemize what I have received. It seems to me the crux of the issue is what has not been received. If I may limit my work to listing what I have not received. I'm happy to do my fifth or sixth further refinement of angels dancing on the head of a pin. But I also understand, and I wanted to make sure I understood it correctly, that because the OEWD custodian sent Cheryl Ledger the invoices, that you yourselves, the Sunshine Ordinance Task Committee, will check with Cheryl and verify what in fact has been received, so that at the time I send my new refined list in, it sounds like you're willing to take some responsibility because Cheryl has allegedly received this information.
I think you misunderstood. I'm not sure if there's any taking of responsibility. We're asking. I mean, I think our order, our continuance order, is pretty clear that we need more specificity from you, and for us to be able to go forward on this, we need to figure out what you've received by asking you to specify what is it you have received and what you haven't received. We just don't go through line by line, page by page, all the documents that come through. That's not that's just not within the scope of what the task force does. Selectively, we will look at documents at certain times, but we don't index them. That's not our job. So I think that I ask you to try your best to go forward based on the discussions that we've had and the continuance that we've given, and the fact that this is now focused more on the OEWD. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hooper. I need to move on to the next case.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see.
Next item on the agenda.
Thank you, Victor.
Item number 7 is file number 19115, complaint filed by Ann Chabot against Margaret Baumgartner. I believe that's Office of the City Attorney for allegedly violating Administrative Code, Section 67.25, by failing to respond to immediate disclosure requests for public records in a timely and/or complete manner.
Okay, let's hear from the petitioner, please.
Good evening, members of the task force and Chabot. The heading, I think, should be Office of the City Attorney, Margaret Baumgartner. And I think the violations should be 6721, 6725, 6727, and the California Public Records Act. Basically, I provided a timeline in my response, which is any member of the public can send an immediate disclosure request to any city employee under the ordinance. It does not specifically have to go to some generic email listed on some website. And the city attorney's office knows this because they've been violated for this in the past. So it was a very simple request. I was asking for all documents concerning a California Court of Appeal case, A156666. And basically, I sent it to Margaret Baumgartner directly because she was the city attorney that handled the case, that had direct knowledge about this. I waited the customary 10 business days, even though the subject line said immediate disclosure request, which requires some sort of response at the next business day. There was no response, and I waited 10 days before I did anything. And prior to filing the formal complaint for a hearing, I made 3 email reminders to Margaret Baumgartner. I got no response. And a paralegal called Buta. I also called this Buta, who didn't know what a sunshine complaint was, and so I resent it to her. Does the respondent have an obligation to produce the documents? Yes, they do. Or to direct me to a place where the documents are. They have documents in their possession. I did not have the documents, and I needed them. So did I submit my request to the appropriate person? I think I did. Margaret Baumgartner was the attorney that handled the case. And I think there might be an additional violation of the rolling basis, failing to determine what documents they had, what documents they were going to turn over in a redacted form, what documents they were not going to turn over at all, and to provide these on a rolling basis if they didn't have them. Instead, I got nothing whatsoever. So I think I did my due diligence prior to filing the complaint to reach out with the 3 emails way past the 10-day time period, and to make a call to someone who really didn't even know what a sunshine request was. And I thought I was very cordial. I was not threatening in any manner. I was not angry at all. I just wanted the documents. And I think that's pretty well it, as best I can understand.
Okay, we can hear from respondent now. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, task force members. John Cote with the City Attorney's Office. First, I'd just like to bring up a threshold question. As this body knows, Ms. Trabeau/Ms. Detesh has had numerous occasions where she has failed to comply with Sunshine Ordinance Task Force rules regarding the complaint procedure, including responding to task force staff. So I would ask that you table or dismiss this complaint based on your protocol and procedures around complaints. Obviously, that decision is up to you. If you choose not to do that, I would refer you to the writ response in this matter. You will find it on page 1357. That's task force page 1357 of your packet. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Members, any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay.
I don't have any either at this time.
Okay, so this is 19115, and this is about the Court of Appeal case. So you were a question to the petitioner. You were requesting documents from Margaret Baumgartner at the City Attorney's Office, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, it had involved a case were actually, you were the party on one side and she was the attorney on the other side. Is that correct?
She was the attorney of record.
She was attorney of record for the city, and the case involved the city on one side and you individually on the other side. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So these are all documents, wouldn't you think, that you already had because you were the party to the litigation?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Were you looking? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So with this particular type of filing, they went through a system where you needed to be registered. I didn't have the documents to do electronic filing. I did paper filings, and I sent them through the mail. It was a very timely, costly, expensive way to do it, but I had no other option because that particular electronic type filing I didn't qualify for. You needed a credit card, and so no, I did not have the documents available to me, which is why I did this filing.
Okay. A question for Mr. Cote. In terms of the documents that Ms. Trabeau is asking for, which I guess it would be copies of the appellate briefs that are out there. What is the basis for not giving them copies to her? In light of the fact that she apparently was not involved in the electronic filing process?
Well, our information is that she is, in fact, misleading this body right now, and that she was, in fact, participating in electronic filing service for the case that's in question here.
No,
case
I was
number
not.
A156666. And as you noted, Chair Schmidt, this was, in fact, a case involving Ms. Datesh where...
My name is Trabeau.
Okay, I know
her original name is Mrs. Paula Datesh. She has subsequently tried these other aliases.
Off topic and
irrelevant.
No interruption, otherwise
but the point is
everybody
that,
on the line. Please, no interruption.
Thank you, Victor. We need to have one person at a time. And I was asking a question to Mr. Cote. So please continue, Mr. Cote. I'm sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Chair Schmidt. So as you noted, this does involve a case involving Ms. Datesh/Trabeau, where a city staffer had to seek a workplace violence restraining order against her. She has access to all of the records in this case, including many of which she has filed herself. We did respond to her in a timely fashion, and we believe that this complaint is wholly without merit, like many other complaints that this particular individual files repeatedly.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the members? Nothing else. Okay. I guess we ought to figure out what we want to do with this. I mean, I could try to give you some information about how these e-filing things work. It sounds like the city attorney's office knows, those services show you when your documents are being served on the other side electronically because the other side is signed up. I just don't, it seems like she's asking for like a second copy of everything because she would have gotten it in the mail or electronically before.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. I was not signed
I'm
up.
sorry. It's not your turn, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah. We're talking, the members of the task force are talking.
So Chair Schmidt, do you think there's anything else? Obviously, we're not at the discussing the merits of it yet. Do you think, though, there's anything else we would need from either party before we send it on to the task force?
No, I think that, you know, I'm not sure if, well, let's see. I mean, if the city attorney's office has things like briefs in their files, I guess that's what the request is for. I don't know if I guess that could be a public record because it's in their file. There's so many other ways to get to these things, but I would guess that even if we do find that these records are public, I would say we advance it with, my motion would be that we have a recommendation to you know, dismiss this to finding of no liability.
Is it my turn?
Not yet, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay.
Did Member Wolf, did you have some input on this?
Well, I think right now, you know, our job here today is first to find whether the records are public and under the Sunshine Ordinance and CPRA, and if we have all the records, and if it's within the jurisdiction of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, and that's it at this point. I think you know, the complaint is clear. You know, I'm not discussing the merits here, just that the complaint is clear, and reading through the file, it seems like everything is there. There's not much more I think I would request or need, or the task force would need.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much there as well. So if you like, I could make a motion to get it out there.
Yeah, go for
it. That to find that we do have jurisdiction, that the records are public, and to advance to the full task force for a hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay. Public comment.
Give me a quick moment. Yep. I just want to make sure I have it correct. You move to find that the SOTF has jurisdiction. The records are public, and to refer the matter to the SOTF for hearing. Sorry about that. I didn't have it typed.
Yep. Thanks, Victor.
Okay, I have the motion. Motion made by member Yankee. Is there a second?
Bruce Wolf.
Seconded by member Wolf. Would you like to take public comment on that motion?
Yes. Public comment, please.
Anonymous, please. Hello?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. I want to be very clear about this. I have no clue who the party is or what they may or may not have done, whether or not they're telling the truth or not. That's completely unrelated to what I'm about to say. So if they have court documents that they filed and are public, and since they're court documents, they're by definition public and disclosable. They're about the conduct of public business. They're prepared, owned, used, or retained. In this case, they're likely retained and probably prepared by the city attorney's office. or even ones they received from this requester in the course of that court case, they have to provide them as public records, and they have to provide them when you request them. This has happened before this task force before. A person had a court case where the city attorney was obviously arguing for the city's side, and they said, well, you should just go look at your discovery, what we gave you in discovery. And that's not a lawful response. And that's what they've basically done here on page P1343. They have to give you a copy of the records. The fact that you also happen to be someone having a court case against the city has no relevance to the fact that the CPRA is your right, the Sunshine Ordinance is your right, and it doesn't matter that they may or may not have given them somewhere else. In this case, they'd have to do things like justify them, provide the copy in the electronic format you request. There are other requirements in the Sunshine Ordinance than there are when you're doing things in court, and therefore they should have to give a copy of the records when anyone makes a request, and it doesn't matter who that person is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Public comment, anyone else? Okay, no further. Let's vote on this one.
On that motion, Member Yankee.
Aye.
Yankee, aye. Member Wolf.
Aye.
Wolf, aye. Chair Schmidt.
Aye.
Schmidt, aye. The motion passes without objection. Next on the agenda is item number 8, file number 19126, complaint filed by Ann Trabeau against the San Francisco Arts Commission for allegedly violating Administrative Code Section 67.25 by failing to respond to an immediate disclosure request in a timely and/or complete manner.
Okay, this is against the Arts Commission. We can hear from the complainant first, please.
Members of the task force, I would like to amend the title to include Rebecca Krill of the San Francisco Arts Commission, since the IDR was sent to her. The issue is that I did not get any records. There was no response. It was clearly marked in the subject line, immediate disclosure request. There should have been some sort of response within 24 hours. There was not. Instead, I got a mishmash of really nothing, which made any sense whatsoever. It's the same request as the previous case, but this is a separate issue, a separate city department, and a separate file. So it should have been treated separately. Instead, their response is a type of collusion. Instead of seeking advice from the city attorney's office, it's the same sort of slander and personal attacks as a response as in the previous complaint. This is outside the scope of the task force. When a person makes a public record request, which is under the jurisdiction of the task force, there's certain rules that could be followed. Instead, it's passed off one to another. And what makes this a little bit more concerning is that the person who sought this workplace restraining order is the one that responded on behalf of the Arts Commission. This is obviously a conflict. So any claim of attorney-client privilege, we don't have to turn over the documents because we're afraid of you, or any other sordid nonsense that they like to spit out, is irrelevant. They're required to produce documents. This might be outside the scope of the task force, but I was not in California at the time. I could not walk into the Court of Appeal and review the documents. I was on the East Coast. I had no other means of getting these documents other than making a document request. So there are numerous violations, justification of withholding, rolling basis, failure to identify which documents they have, which they're going to turn over, which they're going to turn over in a redacted form. There was none of that. I got no records whatsoever. Instead, just a mishmash of slander, which basically I don't know how to respond to, since, and looking at their website, there's somebody called Tal, somebody who's the public information officer. I did not get any emails from that person at all. Instead, it was Ann Trickey who was the subject of the court case, which is clearly a conflict. So I request that the task force find jurisdiction, find that the records are public, that they were not turned over to me, and refer it to the task force, full task force.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the Arts Commission, the respondent? Okay, it sounds like there's nobody here on behalf of the respondent. Okay. Well, members, how do you want to handle this? Any thoughts? I would say that if somebody had, oh, yes.
I would, yeah, two things. One is that the petitioner is correct, that the title is on the agenda is incorrect. And it should be, it should add Rebecca Krell, that is from the intake form throughout the documents. That is who the focus of this is, including in addition to the San Francisco Arts Commission. So it should reflect that. It's a typo kind of thing. So the other thing is I think we have all the information. I don't think there's much more needed here. I would move to find in jurisdiction and to refer to the full task force.
I'll second that.
Okay, let's have public comment on that motion.
Yes, anonymous, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Again, I have no association with this requester or complainant. I don't know what she may or may not have done, or what she's being accused of having done, or vice versa. It has no relevance to whether or not the information is public and whether or not the city committed a violation. And the reason is every single person has an absolute right to public records, including convicted criminals in jail. In fact, they use those rights to get records all the time. No person can be denied public records because what they may or may not have done in the past. I have no idea what that's about, but it's just not relevant to the fact that the city agency has to respond to a records request, regardless of what one particular employee may not or may not have as an issue, legitimate or not legitimate, with a particular member of the public. The city still has an absolute obligation to provide public records under the Constitution, the Public Records Act, and the local sunshine ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone further for public comment? No further. Let's go ahead with a vote.
On that motion, Member Wolf.
Aye.
Wolf, aye. Member Yankee.
Aye.
Yankee, aye. Chair Schmidt.
Aye.
Schmidt, aye. The motion passes without objection. Next on the agenda is announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items by members of the Complaint Committee. Are there any
Well,
announcements or comments by members of the committee?
hmm.
There being no comments, there is nothing to comment on by the public. Is there any public comment on this item?
I would, Ann Turbo, I would request that these two hearings be put on the agenda as soon as you're able.
Please note that that is not a subject matter for this item. Scheduling of these items are at the discretion of the chair of the task force.
Okay.
Thank you, Victor, for catching that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess we're nothing. No comment on that. No public comment on that. So we can go to the next item.
Next item is adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Being no objection, the meeting is adjourned. I am stopping the recording at this moment.